influences on you, musical influences on you?
My musical influences would go back all the way to, in the early days, to country singers like when I was 6 years old or so, Roy Acuff, Ernest Tubb, Bob Wills, all the Texas thing. Growing into almost nearly everybody influenced me. I loved music from such an early age. The big songs of the day were Born to Lose, and as I got into junior high, there was people like Lefty Frizzell and Perry Como, and then into high school it was Shaboom by the Crew Cuts and Eddie Fisher, and then it sort of swung into Mint Julep and things like that, into the Bill Haley, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley thing, which is still with us. It seems to have all come together at the right time for me. I've been in on all of it. Seems to be.
Trademarks. When you think of Roy Orbison, you think of that incredible voice, and you also think of the sunglasses. Where did they come from?
I was flying to Alabama in '63 for a show, an outdoor show, and I left my clear pair of glasses on the airplane. So I just had the shades, and so I was very embarrassed to go on stage in '63 in Alabama, the sunshades. But I had to go on anyway, and I need the glasses to see, so I used them. And then I flew to New York and then on to London for a tour with a group called the Beatles. And all I had was the sunglasses. So the tour was such a success, and we did so well. I think internationally it made the Beatles and made me a big star. And I had the dark glasses on in the pictures, so a sort of instant image. Not something I designed, though, because I was a bit embarrassed about it. But it sort of stuck with me, and so now when people expect to see me, they expect the glasses, so sort of stuck with it.
What do you think the basic element is of rock and roll? What is that core thing that makes it different than other music and has made it survive?
I think the rhythm. You wouldn't have anything if you just had rhythm, but without the rhythm, I remember all the early country songs that I heard. It was a rhythm, built-in rhythm, but not drums and things like that. And even early Presley. There was definitely a rhythm in the man and the voice, and a rhythm in the guitar and the guitars and bass, but there were no drums even on his early records. And so the rhythm has to be all the way through you, and then comes the melody. After the melody, then the lyric, I think. It all has to stand up in turn. If it doesn't have a good beat, then you're not going to get anybody to listen. And then if it's not catchy or not a good melody, it won't hold up. People will forget it. And then as they listen to the lyrics, they have to hold up. They have to mean something, be meaningful. And I think that's the progression of the way the sound it's the way it hits me anyway.
In terms of stage performance, and I know in the early days of Sun, the whole thing of rock and roll, there was a different sense when, it wasn't like going to a concert with a baby grand on stage and a crooner standing at the microphone. There was a different, more active performance style. How did that evolve?
I had played shows for many years before I became a professional. We would play things like the Sandhills Jamboree. I then got on television and played dances. And then I went on tour. And it was very, very strange because all of a sudden, just from one week to the next, almost, people started tearing your clothes off. They started jumping up and down and dancing in the aisles and going crazy over this music. And the thing was, the more excited the audience got, the more we played, the harder and faster and louder and more wonderful we were. So it was sort of I I don't know, there was no inhibition. I used to dance all over the stage, you know, to go crazy, and so did the audience. It was a bit scary if you played for a few thousand people and they got a hold of you. It was very scary, in fact, but it was wonderful. To this day, when I perform live, I like people to let me know they enjoy it, and I let them know in turn. So,
Great. That's it. Roy, there's a kind of common thread that flows through a lot of artists or singers, songwriters at the beginning when they enter the world of the commercial world. And you write as a love, and then of course you've got to learn how to go out there and sell it. And in wanting to sell it so badly, sometimes you sell it cheap. At the very beginning of your career, was it tough to break into this business? And in fact, do you think that was it learning by hard knocks?
First turning professional and wanting to get paid for things, it always came second. I think to most artists it does come second. But then you would like for it to come, and sometimes it doesn't. I remember that there were a lot of thieves around when I started in the business, and I'm sure any artist would say the same thing. But cheaply is the word. Yeah, you sell yourself very cheaply. And I remember writing songs, and there was a fellow named Slim Willett asked me how my BMI was running, for instance. Now, I didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "When they play your songs on the radio, they pay you." And I said, "No, they don't." And he said, "Oh, yes, they do." So things like that. I mean, I went, and then I told Carl Perkins. I said, "You know, when they play Blue Suede Shoes on the air, they're supposed to pay you." And he said, "No, they're not." And I said, "Oh, yes, they are." So then we raced back to Memphis to talk to Sam. But also, we were getting like 3% at Sun. Everybody else was getting 5%. Chuck was getting 5%, I think. So it's a very difficult thing. I couldn't feel any more for a young new artist, you know, coming into the business or going into the business than I do. It seems like in your enthusiasm to get to be noticed and for people to take you seriously at what you're doing, you have to give up nearly everything that you're entitled to. But if you stay in it long enough and keep your ears open and nose to the grindstone and take your knocks and accept a few things, then eventually I think all good things come to you. You need to beware when you begin, though.
As an artist, and I consider a great songwriter, I mean, you had a circuitous route. I mean, you came to Sun and played rock and roll, and then weren't satisfied artistically, and I'm sure, as you said, people say you'll never be a ballad singer. What went into, and how did you come to writing Only the Lonely and Crying and Running Scared and all those great songs?
West Texas is a very lonely place. There's not much to do in West Texas after football season. So I would write songs, and we didn't live in a big house where I had a room to write a song, so I would go sit in the car and write songs, and that's where I wrote Only the Lonely. Good friend Joe Milson and I wrote this song in a car out in front of my house. And I don't know, I think it was, and it wasn't for money. It was just writing for the love of writing. And the same way with most of the early songs. And I think it continued all the way through Pretty Woman, even to today. But the thing was, the songs became recognized and became #1 hits, some of them, and eventually standards, some of them. But writing Running Scared, for instance, it was just, it took us about 30 minutes at the most, and not too long to record it, and it was #1, and then Crying was the next thing we wrote because the pressure was that we had another record coming. We had to write a song for the next record. And I remember early in my career traveling with people who had just one hit record, and I had none. So, but they would sing if they had a hit record about anything, a pair of pants. Then the next song would be about a pair of socks, and the next tune would be about a shirt, and the next one about a hat. So I just didn't want to go down the same path, and so we wrote these songs. The thing about being a singer writing a song, you write the song the way you want to sing it, which makes it sound a little different, and it turns out to be your very own. And there's not a lot of stylizing to do as a singer when you go to the studio. You sing it as you wrote it, and you write it as you sing it. So it's sort of of a piece, of a set thing. And but.
Let me ask you, on Running Scared, which has to be one of the most unique and compelling ballads I've ever heard, I mean, you were saying, you write it the way you're going to sing it. Well, the way you sing it at the end is, just absolutely floors you when you hear that voice. Now, you couldn't possibly sing that song unless you had that voice. I mean,
well, people said on the session when I was recording Running Scared, for instance, I didn't have any formal training as a writer. And so I wrote, I didn't, something high or low didn't make any difference to me. And wrote Running Scared with a high ending, but I was singing it very softly. And when we got into the studio, technology hadn't changed that much. And I remember the producer saying, he said, we're losing the end of the song. He said, if you can't hit that note a little harder, or those notes, he said, we'll lose the record. And of course, everybody heard that in the studio, and I was embarrassed by that and upset and a little bit angry. And I said, run it one more time, please. And so then I hit the note, and everybody looked around, and there were 30-something musicians in that little studio. But those things come with the doing. If you're trying very hard and you're fairly innocent and your motives are fairly pure, then good things happen to you. The good Lord seems to smile on you and give you a little extra each time as you go. So from Running Scared through Crying, which was even more of a vocal experience, all the way through Pretty Woman and all, was probably an evolutionary thing. It was a growth thing on my part.
the world discovering rock and roll and the world discovering Roy Orbison and the songs. I mean, was that a surprise to you? I mean, you do the songs, they're hits, and then to go to Europe, for instance, you travel with the Beatles, and to find that they know your work, that your work has influenced them, and that, you know, there's a second generation of your work.
It's very gratifying as a songwriter to see that the songs have held up a good while, and as an artist to be recognized in Europe and Australasia and foreign climes. It's at the time I was writing and singing and touring, I didn't think about that. I didn't think of posterity and didn't think of the lasting impression or the influences that, you know, might be generated. Just kept going and doing, and with a certain amount of excitement and a certain flair and a lot of luck, just kept going. But it's wonderful to see. You know, these days, if a song lasts 20 years, you've pretty much got a standard. And as a writer, to hear other people do your songs, like I'm sure Chuck would appreciate people doing his songs. It's just a wonderful thing that it's a one-time thing for you, and then you hear a new generation and someone else and all different variations and versions of songs. It's wonderful.